The Vril-athon continues. I have notes. Somebody recommended to me that I should put things in bullet points. I'm not going to use bullet points because ain't nobody got the time for that. This is the moment when Theosophy enters the chat. So it starts getting more and more confusing. Coming Race, published in 1871. Bulwer-Lyttons dies in 1873. There was a wave of vril-related products and interest in the 1880s and 1890s. Look at all these Vril books. Vril, a manual to the secrets of a successful and happy life. I should read that. Yeah, the symbol of the Vril Society. I don't know whether that's a real German Nazi symbol. It feels icky. It's a plan for a boat called the Vril. 1890, 1894. That tracks. Ah, yes, the Vril Bazaar and Fete. More fully billed as the Coming Race in the Vril Bazaar and Fete in joint aid of the West End Hospital and the School of Massage and Electricity. That sounds good. School of Massage and Electricity. That's an interesting thing in and of itself. Electricity being put to all kinds of quasi-medicinal uses. Suspended and sometimes moving as if flying above the crowd were mannequins costumed as the winged Vril. Oh, they sold Bovril there, which we know all about that. 1891. So the book's published in 1871. In the 1890s, they're still naming things after Vril. Very popular. Theosophical Society, founded in New York City in 1875, and the primary person associated with that was Helena Blavatsky, the Russian mystic and principal thinker. Did you know the word Theosophy, combining roots meaning God and wisdom, appeared back in the 17th century? Oh, I did not know that. So this is just a few years after the Coming Race. Her first book, Isis Unveiled, comes out in 1877, 2 years after the founding of the Theosophical Society. And she mentions Vril in it, as we have already established, and I'm going to go through those mentions and have a closer look at them. Isis Unveiled is a huge book, and so is The Secret Doctrine. The first thing they say about it here in Wikipedia is that it has often been criticized as a plagiarized work, with scholars noting how Blavatsky extensively copied from many sources popular among occultists at the time. So Theosophists now are very defensive about this point of the plagiarism issue.
Let's get a little feel for Isis Unveiled. The full title is Isis Unveiled, a master key to the mysteries of ancient and modern science and theology.
It's a bold
title. It was published in 1877. And again, it's huge, over 1,300 pages. She's going to argue that psychic forces are the basis of physical reality. In our previous episode on Blavatsky's life, we noted that she claimed to be in contact with certain individuals mentally, that she referred to as these ascended masters. Basically, what she's doing, what she's claiming, what she's describing is channeling. That would be the more familiar term today. So Blavatsky is actually claiming to be channeling information that goes into her books that give her doctrine, her theology, and of course her beliefs about science. And
okay, that's the part I was looking for there. So she is claiming that Isis Unveiled, a lot of the content was channeled, that came from the Ascended Masters. The writing of Isis Unveiled. Let's see. 2 minutes. I got time.
With a reference library of scarcely 100 volumes, she yet produced a book which suggests the free use of a museum. Whence did she get this knowledge? How did she produce such a book? Here are her own words on the matter. But when I wrote Isis, I wrote it so easily that it was certainly no labour but a real pleasure. I never put to myself the question, can I write on this subject? For whenever I write upon a subject I know little of, I address myself to them, and one of them inspires me. Again she writes, I live in a kind of permanent enchantment, a life of visions and sights, with open eyes and no trance whatsoever to deceive my senses.
So there you have it. According to Blavatsky, Isis Unveiled comes from them. She's channeling things. She's reading a lot. People who've looked at it passage by passage say that basically she just lifted it, a lot of the content, and stuck it in there. And the plagiarism claim, okay, the guy's name, William Emmett Coleman. Best remembered for his criticism of Helena Blavatsky and the claims of Theosophy. He argued in his writings that Blavatsky had plagiarized her ideas from other sources and stolen quotations. More or less exhaustive analysis of the contents of the writings of Madame H.P. Blavatsky. Trace the sources, mostly without credit being given. So far as pertains to Isis Unveiled, Blavatsky's first work, the proofs of its wholesale plagiarism have been in print 2 years, and no attempt has been made to deny it. Okay, so where do I get to that? In Isis Unveiled, published in 1877, I discovered some 2,000 passages copied from other books without proper credit. Boy, it seems like it would be easy enough in the days of the internet because you can search individual passages, and all these books have got to be in public domain. That's the phrase I'm looking for. So they've all got to be in public domain. Because I would like specific examples, because I've also read the rebuttal to this. It said that she wasn't really plagiarizing. She did what other people have done and, secondary sources and yada, yada, yada. Some other of the more extensive plagiarisms in Isis. It includes the names of the books plagiarized from, the number of passages in them that were plagiarized. That doesn't tell me where they are in the Isis book. This is unsatisfying. Curiosity, what those passages are, because it should be super easy to find now with all the various plagiarism tools we have available, even just searching for distinct phrases. And it is how many cons and pseudoscience people have been busted. A lot of them don't even know that when you copy and paste something from the internet, color of the text is not straight black as it is on a printer. It's like a little bit gray. So when you look at it all, you can see where they pasted things in. Anyway, it would have been harder in the 1870s to track all that down. So I'm curious as to what Coleman did. But if it looks to you like I went to sleep, got back up, put the same clothes on, and restarted this video, you are correct. I didn't even comb my hair. Nobody got time for that. All right. So let's get into where Blavatsky actually talks about Vril in Isis Unveiled. Vril. Chapter 5. Barely awake yet. What kind of psychopath gets up at 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning to finish talking about Vril? Bulwer-Lyttons in his Coming Race describes it as the Vril. Okay, so she goes through all of these kind of different names for sources of energy out there. I have not heard of most of these. I'm not a big mythology person. But okay, so you can find any source of energy you want from any kind of cultural reference that you want and say that it's all Vril. So Bulwer-Lyttons in his Coming Race describes it, meaning all of this stuff in this paragraph up here, as the Vril, used by subterranean populations, allowed his readers to take it for a fiction. These people, he says, consider that in the Vril they had arrived in the unity of natural energetic agencies, and proceeds to show Faraday, who figured out how electricity and magnetism were related to one another, which they are. That's why we have electric motors. Thank you, Faraday. Under the more cautious term of correlation, blah, 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 blah. Our comparison of a fictitious Vril invented by the great novelist, he's not that good, and the primal force of the equally great experimentalist, Faraday, I think she's talking about there, the Kabbalistic astral light, it is nevertheless the true definition of this force. So she is saying that in Bulwer-Lytton's fiction, he is presenting a truth through a fictitious means. So I guess to, getting word from the ascended masters and channeling things herself, we can now add books of fiction to Blavatsky's sources. So how does she support this? Again, Theosophy loves to mix its religion and science and philosophy together. So she supports this by telling us about a recent new fantastic invention that demonstrates the reality of Vril. Another of the most startling of recent discoveries is the possibility of annihilating distance between human voices by, wait for it, the telephone. When was the telephone invented? First basic phone in 1849, devised a phone in 1854, won the first U.S. patent for the device in 1876. Okay, so the patent is the year before Isis Unveiled is published. So it is indeed cutting-edge technology. The voice is seized upon, so to say, and held in the form by a magnet, and the sound wave transmitted by electricity acting in unison and cooperating with the magnet may be rudely described as a sort of trumpet. Okay, and she goes on to just talk about the telephone in the presence of such wonderful discoveries of her age and the further magical possibilities lying latent and yet undiscovered in the boundless realm of nature. So she is putting things like the telephone, these technologies that physicists and inventors and other people who are learning about the natural world devised and figured out, she's putting those into the realm of the supernatural and magic, or at least she's using those as support for those kind of ideas. The telephone does not run on Vril, ladies and gentlemen. Natural, not supernatural. Natural. As one of my friends in CRM used to say, We know about it. We know how the telephone works. There's nothing magical. Only in connection with these discoveries, we may perhaps well remind our readers of the many hints to be found in the ancient histories as to a certain secret in the possession of the Egyptian priesthood who instantly communicate during the celebration of the mystery. Oh my God. So because we have figured out the telephone today, this is the whole problem with the way the ancient lost civilization people approach technology. Every cutting edge device is somehow something that we can then rediscover was present in the ancient world, and we just didn't recognize it before. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's kind of a strange obverse to like the ancient aliens or the people who, when they see a new technology today, they think that there's no way we could have devised it without help from the outside. I mean, these things seem to be kind of related, like the way technology plays into relatively naive and stupid, I'll just say it, stupid ideas about both the ancient past and the present. An invention like the telephone, we have literally all the steps, everything that had to line up and all the different development for this device to be possible. We understand exactly how it works. That's why you can patent it. You cannot patent a supernatural force. And to say that therefore that means Vril is more likely because some guy wrote about it a few years earlier, and ancient societies talk about some kind of energy and they talk about communicating over long distances, that they also had the telephone somehow. It makes no sense. We have in future possibility, nay, the assurance of a race which, like the Vril-athon, Bulwer-Lyttons coming race, will be but one removed from the primitive sons of God. What the hell is she talking about here? Maybe this has to do with kind of her idea that there's a spiritual development that emanates, not like a kind of biological, physical survival of the fittest. So I don't really know what the hell she's talking about. But once again, she's appealing to a fictitious book as somehow demonstrating or supporting or resonating with this idea that there are stages of development of human consciousness, psychological or physical beings, and that there's going to be a next step on. Spoiler alert, I'm guessing that's probably one of the things that the Nazis really liked about Theosophy. Yeah, she's saying that Vril comes from a shortening of virile, revealing Blavatsky's aim. Freemasons. Okay, we're getting ahead of ourselves there. How to study the secret doctrine. Not too many people talk about ISIS Unveiled. Who's this guy?
All right, everyone, it's time for Occult Literature, video number 121. This is an interesting work right here. Vril, The Power of the Coming Race. Has nothing, by the way, to do with like racialism, before anybody assumes that.
Yeah, actually it does. Hexenham 666, Hexenhammer 666. If you read it carefully, you will notice it actually, and if you know the history, it does actually have to do with quote unquote racialism. What else you got to say?
About 182 pages in length. It's a full-length work. It's also fictional, but with reservations. I say that, and I'll have to get into the nitty-gritty here of that. As always,
I'm not
link
sure
in the description to
want to get into
finds himself
nitty-gritty
in the inner earth. I'm not going to give away too much of the plot, because
please, yeah.
Sort of things about the actual things, the living things encountered, as opposed to like this works actually ever written by a human being. It would be like the antediluvian world or the Edda.
What's this?
It's one of the most socially relevant works actually ever written by a human being.
Really? You're talking about this book?
Be like the antediluvian world or the Edda. Some of these other works, you got to realize that sort of style of sci-fi writing basically built the modern world. Almost everything that's happened since that period of time has been built on the backs of such literature. And this literature was in turn informed prior to that by a lot of the folk magic traditions and grimoires of yesteryear from the Renaissance. It's almost the birth of modern civilization was
my
occultism.
goodness. This is
but you
important.
have to understand a little bit about literary history and about sort of the occult traditions that inform these works if you want to understand how indeed that functions. And it's still happening to this day.
What I know is that the guy wrote a pretty boring book that was very popular at the time, which is something that happens a lot. And now nobody remembers him. And psychopath theosophist picked up the ball and ran with it and then eventually handed off to the Nazis. That's the relevance of it. Don't tell me that's nothing to do with racialism. Get real.
It's an ongoing, ever-present process. Other updates or anything.
Okay, whatever. Blavatsky founds the Theosophical Society in 1875. Isis Unveiled, 1,300 pages. In 1877, that book contains references to Vril acknowledging that the coming race was a quote-unquote work of fiction, but it was actually revealing a deeper truth and giving name to this force that was out there. And in order to support that, she reaches for examples from modern, at the time, emerging technologies such as the miraculous telephone to marvel at how it is possible to communicate over long distances without being in physical proximity to one another. And ancient societies must have done the same thing, and completely kind of blows by the fact that we know how the telephone works and there is nothing magical or supernatural about it. It is all, in fact, very natural, which is, of course, why you can get a patent for the telephone. Who has ever tried to patent a supernatural force? I'm not sure how the patent office would react to that. But anyway, that's part one of Theosophy, picking up the Vril ball and starting to run with it. And I think next time I will take a look at The Secret Doctrine, which is a much more well-known work of Blavatsky's, and see where that gets us along this journey. So thank you for... I'm speechless. I feel like she's looking at me with those eyes. Looking at me. I wonder where she's buried. According to the Theosophical Society, her remains were cremated, with her ashes being divided between New York, London, and India, where the ashes are interred under her statue in Adyar. So I cannot go visit her grave, unfortunately. Rest in peace, Helena. You have given us all a lot to talk about. See you for the Vril-athon Part 5.